of Europe defending the Egyptian state and the Egyptian position and causing a lot of results. The Saudi situation that is always on the side of Egypt, 1973, and before 73, we are proud of the position of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And Iraq is on the side, and they're declaring support. The Jordanian Minister of Foreign Affairs said, if the Egyptian army falls, the whole region falls. This is the language of the whole world, but they're still going on with the conspiracy, and they're imagining that they can shake the Egyptian army or the Egyptian police or the Egyptian people. Today is a sad day for sure, but are we going to go on grieving, or are we going to get into battle with terrorists and murderers? We will go on with the fight. We did that before. A war against terrorism, and we're going to get into that. But what we want to say to them, remember and review all the wars against terrorism in all the countries. You'll find that life is the victorious and death is the one that ends. The funeral in a lot of governorates, Menofia paid a lot of price. Kafr al-Sheikh, Al-Yubiya, Sharqiya, and we have from Menofia, I'll have to go to Menofia, we have Mr. Gamal Din Muhammad from Menofia, the correspondent of Al-Misa newspaper. Tell me about the funeral. There is an assembly in front of the governor. It's more than 50,000 people of the residents of the city of Shibin. We have 4 martyrs from Shibin. Martyr Abdurrahman Hussein Abdul Muhsin from Shibin al-Qum. More than 80,000 people now in front of the governor's office, which is the Revolution Square in the 30th of June. And where are they going? There will be a march, and Major General Saeed Tawfiq, the security director of the governorate and the one functioning as governor. Which village is he from? He's from the city of Shibin al-Qum. Ahmed Abdul Ati is from Masalha, and his corpse arrived at Masalha. Said Abdul Latif is from a village away from Shibin al-Qum, 5 kilometers away from Shibin al-Qum, and he is in the mosque of Al-Qaffas in Kafr Tambiti. Afifi Saad Afifi Abduraza is from Shobra Kharfoun, and this is part of Shibin al-Qum, and he has 3 minutes to be in the village. Are they all popular funerals? Yes. All the villages are awaiting the corpses. Arrived, and the sadness is on the faces of even children. Children are crying. Old men, it's a scene that breaks the heart. Are there any chants or all against the brotherhood? And the martyr is the lover of God, and the brotherhood are the enemies of God. I believe that this will have a strong reaction and response against the brotherhood. I think Menofia has the biggest share in this. Yes, a big numbers from Menofia. 21 martyrs distributed on Shibin al-Qum. Birkasok, Wisna, and 6 parts of Monofea.
أستاذ جمال الدين محمد مراسل
Mr.
جريدة
Gamal Din
المساء في
Muhammad,
المنوفية بشكرك.
correspondent of Al Misa
طريقة
newspaper, and we
الشغل
move to Kafr
الإرهاب
Sheikh.
بيضرب فيها دلوقتي بالفعل
Tourism is
الانفجار
striking
في
right now
المبنى
in
الأمني
Kafr Sheikh,
المركزي
and there's
وحصل إن هم
an
بيضربوه
explosion
الدرون
in the central
يعني اللي هم بيقولوا
security
بيدافعوا عنهم ما
building, and they're
بيضربوش
attacking
غير
only the poor ones.
المفكرين
They're saying
والمبدعين
that
ما
they're
بيضربوش غير الفقراء
defending.
والمبدعين.
And of
شريف
course the
العودة
thinkers
كفر
and
الشيخ
creative. We have
مساء
Sharif
الخير
Lauda
أستاذ
and Kafr
شريف.
Sheikh.
أستاذ شريف
Mr. Sharif,
معانا الزميل شريف العودة
do we
كفر
have
الشيخ.
colleague Shreem Lauda? Yes,
مساء
I'm
الخير
here.
أستاذ شريف. قول لي
Tell me,
الأجواء عندك إزاي الأول في انفجار فعلا حصل
is there an explosion? Was there an explosion? Yes. At 8 o'clock, at 8 p.m., there was a huge explosion in the Central Security Camp, synchronizing with a big march that was dispersed by the security officers. This explosion, a loud explosion, was there. There is terror in the region, and Baltim. Is it in Baltim? It's in Baltim. The camp is in Baltim. The Central Security building in Baltim. The camp of the Central Security is in Baltim, specifically in the end of Baltim, the tip of Baltim, and it's part of Kafr Sheikh Governorate.
طب هل سقط ضحايا يا أستاذ
Are
شريف؟
there any victims? Thank God, no. The explosion came in one of the vehicles of the Central Security. The residents stood against the march that was coming to cut the international road in Baltim. Kafr Sheikh is witnessing today an attack against terrorism by all the political powers and civil powers in Kafr Sheikh. They're now standing against terrorism, and they have the families of the martyrs. They're,
هو كم شهيد
how many?
كفر الشيخ؟
One martyr from Kafr Sheikh? No, over 6
كفر الشيخ.
from Kafr Sheikh. And it's taking,
احنا عندنا 2 في حادثة رفح مش كده يا أستاذ شريف؟
but in Rafah incident, 2.
اه
Fowa, the city of Fowa has Shahid martyr Ali Abu Talib, 21 years old, in one of the villages near Fowa, Islah village, and they're awaiting
الجنازة.
the funeral now, and the scene is so grand. I'm inside Fowa, and I'm heading to Islah village to cover the funeral. And you see the masses before you enter. From Dessous, all the political powers in Dessous are moving. They started moving half an hour ago, and they have 20 vehicles to stand with Islah village, which is part of Fowa, the city of Fowa. The entrance of Islah, huge masses of people, men and women and old elderly men and political powers and symbols.
الغضب شكلها ايه يا أستاذ شريف؟
How does the anger
الناس بتعبر
look like? How are people expressing anger? There are campaigns that started hours ago, Intifada, and an attack against terrorism. It's really dangerous here, and especially after the Freedom and Justice Party on its website saying that police has a responsibility of the burden of the violence in the governorates, and there's a state of anger after Ali Agua sacked all the officials who are part of this organization, and there is anger in cities like Dessous and city of Kafr Sheikh. 2 hours ago, Dessous Bassioun road was cut.
عشان بس نوضح بس
To make it clear, Mr. Sharif,
طريق دسوق بسيون يعني اللي هو
Dessous
الرابط
Bassioun,
بين
this is the link
محافظة
between
كفر الشيخ
the
والغربية.
Kafr Sheikh and Gharbiya governorate. The Muslim Brotherhood group had demonstrations. Each village has its group. They took the Muslim Brotherhood outside and they cut the door, cut the road on several stations. So they cut the road. Yes, they did.
يخرج لهم الناس ويفتحوا الطريق.
There were some residents, and there is a state of chaos and conflict, verbal conflict, and now the masses are expecting and awaiting the corpse of the martyr, and they reached the march. I heard that it reached Tanta,
الشهيد النهارده ان شاء الله يورى الصورة
but the
النهارده يعني.
funeral is tonight. It's unbelievable. The scene is unbelievable, and the shouting and the crying, the shouting that the terrorism reached everything. Our condolences, Mr. Sharif, and we'll go to Qalibiyah,
سقط
which
على ارض سيناء بايدي التتار الجدد. معانا الزميل الاستاذ حسن صالح مدير مكتب جريده الوطن في القليوبيه.
had
مساء الخير
spilled
يا أستاذ
blood. We have Mr. Hassan Saleh.
كم شهيد في القليوبيه يا أستاذ؟
How many martyrs? We have Muhammad Mansour and Assam Nabil, two, and they are from Qanat al-Khairiyya, and Assam Nabil is from Qalyub.
قليوب. هل تم تشييع جثمانهم؟
And the funerals are held yet. We're receiving the corpses now, and then move to the villages, and there are big masses of the people. Thousands? You can say that. Thousands? Yes.
هل في هتافات أو
Are there any chants or no God but Allah? The martyr is the lover of God, and
اللي الناس بتهتفوا؟ طب هل العزاء طبعا هيبقى بكره في القريتين؟
and there is a funeral tomorrow. Yes, in two villages, and it will be a public one and popular. Yes, it's open, and everybody is in sympathy with the family of the martyr, and they're standing as one man in front of this disaster. Mr. Hassan Saleh,
مدير مكتب جريده الوطن في
the director of Al Watan newspaper office in Qalibiyah, and it's the same scene everywhere. Thousands in Menofia, thousands in Kafr Sheikh, thousands in Qalibiyah, saying goodbye to the martyrs of the nation. It's the biggest funeral after the assassination of the 17th. The 17 were assassinated in the time of their own Morsi, and so whom are they defending now? Sharia and legitimacy, and when they were in power, the death cycle was there, and add to that kidnapping, but they turned the cycle quickly. So they practiced terrorism while they were in power, and they're still practicing it after the people rejected them with a public revolution in the 30th of June. The state we're in, however, the grievance is, but it results into a very strong will to challenge. You hear the father of a martyr and a brother, I have other children that I'm willing to give. So you're not going to scare off the Egyptians. You're not going to terrorize the Egyptians. However you explode, however you assassinate, Egypt is capable of constructing. You are the ones who fail, and with your alliance. And there are reasonable voices in the whole world are now increasing and telling what is happening, and they're defending the Egyptian position, and condemning the Brotherhood, or the New Tartar, as I like to say. In the United States, there are voices now that accuse Obama of confusion, and the former U.S. ambassador to the UN, he says that Obama has no vision, and everything he does in the Middle East, it's a reaction, and when he has an action, his action leads to new losses in the Middle East and in Egypt specifically. We all know John Bolton, their ambassador, their former ambassador in the UN. Part of what he said, confusion and hesitation is not new to the management of the US President Barack Obama. And Egypt is not the right place, and this is not the right time to commit strategic mistakes. And the United States of America needs to specify its priorities in the light of the strategic importance of Egypt and the possibility of aggressive acts of aggression that might between the state and the armed groups. And there are also reports, there is an indicator, the democracy indicator that comes from the International Developmental Center. He says that Egypt is undergoing the biggest crisis. He said that the revolution of the street on the Brotherhood regime made Obama lose an important alliance to execute all the interests of America and Israel. Their Morsi, this is their alliance. And the negative policies of Obama reflected on supporting a regime that is not accepted by the street, the Egyptian street, and this has led to a disaster that Obama is trying to exit and escape by failed attempts. The report also said that the Ministry of Egyptian Defense rejects the kneeling down to the pressures exercised by the American administration, but the American administration used 3 cards as the indicator of the democracy indicator report. They used the aids and the weapons, and the third is to the spare parts that they supply to the Egyptian army. And there is persistence to reject these pressures. And they described the Egyptian position or situation as fixed and stubborn, supported by the Arab world, and based on a nation and a very aware people. This is the situation of the armed forces, and this people is increasing in its unity next to its armed forces. This is from the United States. Some other capitals, we're witnessing changes, and most importantly, the Saudi movement, especially that for the first time, the Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs speaks in this firm and very vivid and clear-cut language that sometimes has some sort of sarcasm or irony from the West. He said that Syria is witnessing massacres, hundreds of thousands of people, and the Western world, who speaks about the human rights after the evacuation and dispersion of the sit-ins in Nahda and Rabah, didn't say anything and left the blood cycle run in Syria. He said that in his meeting with Hollande, the French president, and I think he said it very sharply. Some passages of the Saudi, some quotation of the Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs, he said that the uprising of 33 million Egyptian people cannot be described as a coup d'etat, and it is. He described this the situation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as unfortunate. They feel unfortunate of the killing and the murder of innocent people and burning the country. This is the Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he said this is a current that rejects reconciliation and listening to the people. And he went on very sharply, saying that it is unfortunate, the international stance is unfortunate, and this is Prince Saud al-Faisal, the Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs, burning the police stations and trying to turn the crisis into guerrilla wars. And Europe hears that from the Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he's not just in a visit to France, but it's a tour in France, and he's moving as if,
يسعدنا ويشرفنا طبعا بقول
and we're pleased to have that, as if he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt.
ايضا لكن الموقف السعودي
We have an Egyptian Minister of Foreign
معايا على الهاتف
Affairs
سيادة
who
اللواء
is
طبعاً
also
بتكلم. مساء الخير سيادة اللواء.
moving around, and
اهلا
I
بحضرتك
have
طبعا.
Major
يعني
General
تعزينا
طلعت
لمصر او تعزينا لانفسنا.
Musallam on the phone.
الموقف الدولي وحضرتك بتتابعه
Our compromise, our condolences, and the international situation is changing every couple of hours. Are you monitoring that? Some variations, but I'm still don't see the change to the desired level. What about the Saudi movement? Very important, and highlights the points the West is ignoring, and I believe that it could be a big step, but I feel at the same time that the other side is giving a deaf ear to the whole thing. They have a prejudice, a presupposed idea and or evaluation, and they're not changing. I hope all the success for the Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs in his trip, and I appreciate it a lot, but I do not expect a lot of results. Not because he's falling short, but it's the strategy of these countries that had been set years ago.
طب سيادة اللواء في إظهار الموقف
Mr. General, we have the Russian and the Chinese attitude. The two attitudes are supporting Egypt. This is attitude of Russia since the crisis started, and this is also the Chinese attitude as well. Let me add that Germany condemned the targeting and the attacking of the churches and the killing of the martyrs. It appears that the fire is blazing in Syria, and at present there is firing, intensive firing in the north of Sinai. We have our correspondent Muhammad Hagawi. Good evening, Hagawi. Good evening, sir. What is the situation? Some time ago, we listened to firing. We didn't know whether it is a bomb or an RPG. Intensive firing was also directed to the Directorate of Security in Arish. The cars have been searched in the vicinity of these buildings. Forces are police and army forces. We have tribes, and no one is allowed to go out because of the curfew. People are also afraid as a result of the attacks on the police and the army. Yeah, they are being pursued, but there is no response. And we have been unable to reach their whereabouts. Are there any victims at present? We do not know for sure. I want to be a real witness. We need information, piece of news. Yeah, but at present the place is being searched out. They are the police and the army are searching the entire place. The police station of Arish is being also acting very well within the place. Also, what happened at the National Bank of Egypt near the sea, there were, as has been said, there are some vacant areas, uninhabited. There are some uninhabited buildings. What is the distance between the military intelligence? Is about 500 meters, and with the National Bank is about 1 kilo, so it is a square of 2 kilometers. Major Ahmed Galal was targeted as well. The other two operations were undertaken about half an hour ago or 15 minutes ago. Mr. Hagawi, our correspondent at Aris, thank you very much. During this reporting, we need to review terrorism and how the terrorist strike and the attitude of the entire people to take this challenge. I would like to go to Mr. Azazi Ali, Dr. Ali Azazi. He is a leader in the Salvation Front. Dr. Azazi Ali Azazi. Yeah, there is another telephone call before we go to the meeting. General Osama Mutwalli, Director of Kafr Sheikh Security. What about the explosion in Baltim? Are there any human losses of life? There was no explosion in Baltim. It is one of the lorries belonging to the Central Security containing certain supplies for the recruits. There was self-ignition and it has been under control. The motor of that car or that vehicle burned out, and our correspondent Sharif Al-Uqda from Kafr Sheikh, the correspondent is not going to be our correspondent since he said something which is different from the reality. After the break, we will have Dr. Azazi Ali Azazi.
طبعا بنترحم على شهدائنا اللي
pay our condolences to the families of the martyrs and to the family of Ahmed Galal who was killed in another place. There are no explosions in the security forces camp nor in Baltim. Mr. General Osama Mutwalli, the director of security, said that it was one of the vehicles of the security force who said that this is an accident. Let me address you as a leader in the Salvation Front. The statement issued seems to be very powerful Egyptians are going into a battle in their national struggle. They are facing a war declared by the terrorist organization Islamic Muslim Brotherhood, who declared the war against the Egyptian state and against the will of millions of Egyptians who took to the street in order to get rid of their fascist regime. We declared our confidence in our military forces, the army and the police force. We would like to confirm the following points. The killing of 25 Egyptian soldiers is part of the war declared against the state and against the Egyptian people. The statement was issued after we have seen the scene of the martyrs arriving at Al-Maza airport. I would like to say that this is a massacre for which human conscience will feel sad. If you talk about the furnace of the Nazists, if it were a truth, the massacres that were perpetrated during the wars in Europe, we have not seen such scenes. It is a massacre that is being perpetrated in name of the Islamic creed and in name of the Sharia and legitimacy. Even if you are slaying an animal or a bird, it is recommended that we should do this kind of slaughter in a humanistic way. Even in the military operations, they are ready to explode a vehicle, but to get the people off the microbuses and kill them in this way, there are certain morals. You should not uproot a tree. You should not kill a woman. You should not kill an old man. You should not behave in an inhuman manner. And in wars, there are certain covenants for these wars. If you raise a white handkerchief, it means surrender, and you will be a prisoner of war. You will not be killed. They have gone beyond all these manners. Actually, they are acting as very primitive terror that happened before the time of civilization and culture of the human beings. Yeah, if you remember, they killed the 16 officers during the month of Ramadan. But what happened today, we will remain in the memory of the Egyptian people for a long time. And I would like to say that there is no similitude of this terrorist group other than Tartars, the new Tartars, because the Tartars, when they entered Baghdad, they crossed on the dead body of the libraries and culture of that region at that time. Light is not shed on the properly on the looting of Malawi's museum.
الانبا ارميا بيقول دلوقتي ان في 73 كنيسه
There are 73 churches and other Christian properties. Yeah, buildings will be rebuilt, but the churches has things of cultural value. We needed actually to stop and say something about the barbarism of this group. What happened nowadays in Egypt is similar to what happened in the Tartars' attack against Iraq and that area. One of them said that we are going to fight against this infidel civilization. Yeah, he was promoting terrorism. And, yeah, they are the enemies of culture and civilization. What they perpetrated is not a retaliation against a state, nor is it against a retaliation against the institutions of the state, like the army and the police in particular. I'm telling you what's happening in Minya. We have our colleague Saeed Nafi, director of Al-Masri Al-Yawm in Minya. Good evening, Saeed. Yeah, greetings to you and to your guest. What about the news about on the conflict? Yes, it is happening. They are attacking the people, but the people prevented them from repeating. So they started moving their demonstrations to the villages. The people refused them to cross in the street, and Rida Muhammad Ahmad from Abu Dhabi has been wounded. Their answer to anyone who is at variance with them is to shoot at him. 3 citizens have been wounded, and one of the 3 has been badly wounded and was transferred to the Minya Hospital, General Hospital. They also burned the house of someone in Mukhtar Hindi, the house of Mukhtar Hindi, who is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. So the events are ongoing, and you know that Bani Mazar police station has been seized or besieged by the Muslim Brotherhood for some time before. At Qum Zuhair and Sheikh Masoud at Al-Adwa, and the demonstrations are going on. Is the curfew not implemented, or is it because those are villages? We have 6 police stations that have been set on fire. Adwa police station, Matai and Samalut, Abu Korkas and Der Mawas. So the security forces are absent altogether. In Bani Mazar, it's only in the township, but villages are vacant from the security forces altogether. I'd like to ask you, Saeed, how many are they? Are they more than the people who are confronting them? Their numbers are very small, not exceeding hundreds, but they meet about 30% from each individual village, so 300 or 400 people would go in the street, and they have other supporters and women and the children. In Al-Idwa township, there were negotiations for reconciliation between the people and the Muslim Brotherhood supporters. They said this is not going to happen after the destruction of buildings. So people reject any reconciliation with them. I will continue to be in touch with you, Mr. Saeed, whenever there is developments. It is quite evident that rejection of reconciliation is at the level of the bases. They have certain tactics, quick demonstrations, collecting people from different villages to go in a demonstration. If you find someone with face covered, know that he is coming from he is from the same place. With bare face, he is coming from a different place. People are more than them in numbers, and they depend mainly on betrayal tactics. Number two, they do not announce or advertise for a demonstration, and all of a sudden you find it in front of you. So they are trying to avoid any direct confrontation. They will always try to escape direct confrontation. The conflict in Egypt is not between two components. It is between the people and this terrorist group, the army, the people, the police, in face of terrorism, which is sabotaging the country according to a well-contrived plan. The idea of talking about full support to the army and the police, it is a popular, a social alternative. It's not the option of political forces. There should be complete condemnation of double standards by the American and the West at large. Reaffirming that the Egyptian people will never forget the attitude of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan. The attitude of Saudi Arabia restores the very good concept of Arabism, pan-Arabism. They are taking the responsibility on their shoulders. As the Prime Minister of Jordan said today, the army of Egypt must remain and should continue to exist, because if the army is destroyed, the entire region will be devastated. The conspiracy is to disintegrate the Egyptian army. So the result, they imagine that the people will not continue to resist them after the burial of the martyrs. People went to the houses of the Muslim Brotherhood members and sympathizers. They know very well that they are not restore their position in the society. A large number of them will be in prison, and another sector of them should go into a process for rehabilitation in mental hospital for rehabilitation socially and psychologically, so that they become again accepted by the Egyptian society. But do not forget that this is a tax that we have to pay. We are very sad indeed, and today the hearts of Egyptians are extremely sad, but we as a state have restored our prestige through a democratic mechanism, genius one, that is the popular democracy, direct democracy. 30 million votes, 30 million votes were moving on the ground. In Kirdasa, there are some armed people who are closing the road with sand sacks. Correspondent of Al Masri News, what's happening in Kirdasa, Mr. Ibrahim? Yeah, witnesses in. You did not see. I did not see, but let us have some reservation, so that so long as you have not seen with your own eyes. Yeah, one correspondent said that there is an explosion in Baltim, so we do not want to confuse the people. So long as you didn't see, let us have some reservation. If I see by my own eyes, I can speak, or I have a source. Until you get accurate information, let us talk about this.
Some people say that the social network website said, and some people said that Hamdin Sabahi, and sometimes this great revolutionary and this political leader, big political leader, who got 5 million votes, except for the allegations and the falsifications. They said that, and he spent his life in prisons, and he's against naturalization of relationship with the Arab, and it's one of the central issues he cares about. Hamdin Sabah is on top of which the big national symbol. So the social network website that is by the electronic automation, they talked about Hamdin, that Hamdin is in Israel according to the Hebrew radio or broadcast. Nobody listens to the Hebrew radio, but they want to create a state of confusion, and they tend to rumors, to lies, to falsification. Is there anything more than getting pictures from massacres from Syria to show that this is happening in Egypt, in Cairo? And inside Al-Fath Mosque, they opened the fire extinguisher, and live they're saying it's steam, tear gas, and did you see the dead one shaking his leg? I saw these things, and they are trying to do anything. So this terrorism and its continuation, you remember and you read their history quite well. It started with the assassination of Khazandar, or it started and when they started to carry weapons, and after that Qarashi and Nasr, an attempt of assassination of Nasr. It's assured or confirmed every day, and then they had the Islamic group which assassinated Sadat, and now they're returning to the first story. But today, for the first time, they do it with their own hands. They never rejected violence, neither theoretically nor practically, in all their lives. If you see the theater in Rabaa, those who came from all the sides of political Islam, this is not a coincidence in history. Because this man was ousted. When you see Abdurrahman Sanadi and the beginning of the special organization before Khazendar's death, they started training and practicing how to manufacture grenades, and they had explosions in Bahira and Cairo, and they destroyed some institutions and buildings before the assassination. So the idea of violence is a very original and deeply rooted. It's the Machiavelli school that the purpose is too great to the Islamic project, and they're saying that an individual, and then the family, and then a Muslim government, and then an Islamic emirate, and then the whole world. So the more they hurry in the stages, the chains, the more they have to use violence, which is an original part of their constituency. But as for violence, which is taking place today, and people are worried how long my estimation is it's a week, and there will be an incident or another every now and then, but it will be a week at max, and I'll be held accountable. Not because they called it the week of departure, and he said 1 year is enough. He said it in his own speech, and this happened in the assassination of Sadat. After that, you dry the sources. How do you do that? They depend on the fund, the very high fund, very good organization, a social incubator where he can hide, and a weak state. So the state is gaining its strength. There is no social incubator. The organization is dismantled, and the money has been dried up. They're being stolen. The leaders are in prison, and I want to remind you of the moment where President Anwar Sadat was assassinated, and then we get back.
Was attending a military parade to commemorate the 1973 Yom Kippur attack.
الطائرة الميراج والتي أكدنا بها قدرتنا على حماية سماء مصر وأرضها، الطائرة التي أكدت ضرورة تعدد مصادر السلاح، وقد كانت أولى ثمرات القرار الرشيد، وهي طائرة متعددة المهام صناعة فرنسية. ويعتبر الصاروخ توم مفتاح التفوق النوعي لحلف الأطلنطي على التفوق العددي للدبابات، وهو من أهم الأسلحة المضادة للدبابات في الجيش الأمريكي. يمكنه اختراق وتدمير أقوى الدبابات ومن مسافات بعيدة. الصاروخ تو وقد حمل على المركبة الأمريكية الصنع الام 113. والآن تتقدم الطائرة الفانتوم المقاتلة القاذفة لجميع الأجواء الصناعة الأمريكية.
Shortly before the beginning of a state parade, Khaled Islambouli loads his rifle in his tent and hides the hand grenades in a helmet. As his vehicle is passing in front of the tribune, he forces the driver at gunpoint to stop. The assassins jump off.
Israel. The review included a display of Egyptian troops, military hardware, and jet flyovers. presidential platform. Sadat's security force returned fire, but the attack happened so quickly that their response was too little.
President Sadat is hit by 37 bullets, but it is a ricochet which delivers the fatal wound.
على فكرة الجريمة دي كل يوم التاني بيتكشف فيها افلام جديدة على فكرة
has new footages. Some of these are new footages and pictures that were hidden. When we saw this moment, we see a lot of angles, new angles and pictures, but I agree with you that the picture, you still believe that there is conspiracy, and this might be true, that the Brotherhood is part of which, and the dormant cells is a true idea, and this stage we're in, there are big leaders who are dealing security leaders, but none of the army, not a person from the army. And in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the diplomatic, no, you can find one. In the diplomatic field, you can find one or so. But in the army, as an institution, and they have a belief. They have their belief construction of belief does not allow something like that. So these terrorist crimes, and people forget, and then they return and to the society, and then return to terrorism again. Is it addiction? No, it's not addiction, but it's starting from the book of Sayyid Qutb, Signs on the Road, Milestones on the Road. There is a huge hatred of the idea of the modern civil state that has projects and develops, like what happened in Nasr's era. And these ideas that came from that book and the organizations that came after, you're in front of the idea that the ruler is an infidel, and those who are ruled are infidels as well. That's when we started with violent organizations, and it's like this is very barbarian thought. It's not civilian. If you're in a city, you go to people and you practice economic activities and you go to the market, but this is a desert mentality, and the jihad is against the state, it's not against the enemy. There is no operation against an enemy. And those who are killing each other in Israel, in Syria, they have 10 minutes from Israel. When the state collapses, this is the greatest thing. Then the gang overcomes and the state becomes part of the group. The group is organized by an international organization, and the international organization is the enmity between the idea of state is that they don't get into army, they go to the army just like any obligatory service. No, I mean, like, they don't go into faculties they try
بيحاولوا يخشوا لا حتى قبل مرسي
and before Morsi they do, but the military intelligence with its accurate reports excludes a lot of politicians outside, because he has an opinion or a certain ideology that could invest his being inside this institution to practice violence. So this is banned on the Muslim Brotherhood and any other ideology. You just respect the military, Egyptian military ideology, because it's a historical, it's very ancient, and it's very civilized, and it it is based on the national security structure with all its dimensions. So it's a different construction. That's why they reject any other ideologies. I'll return to that. It could be new, and some people will be you think that you're optimistic. You're saying that these waves will not last more than a week or 10 days. No, it's a week. So you seem quite certain. As long as you dried all the sources, and they have been dried, do not expect, except for some betrayal operations. And in the context of betrayal operations, I'm demanding from the police and the army to secure individuals full security in their trips to go back and forth, but they're wearing civilian clothes. They're going to but there are information for these terrorist organizations that it's obvious that it's for certainty it is from Al-Qaeda responding to Al-Zawahri's detainment, because Ayman is the leader of the organization. So they must be serious as terrorists to break the figure and the image of the Egyptian army in Sinai, and it cannot be broken. But securing the individuals is extremely important, because they're the best soldiers of the world. One of the people didn't want to travel, and his father didn't want him to travel, and he said, don't worry, the roads are secured now. So they were not going into an official task or wearing uniform. I'm trying to avoid crying in front of the viewers and the audience. This is a very disturbing scene. It's very hard to comment on these scenes except like to cry or shout. And the people needed the state to be back. The state is going to come back. And this is our revenge that we seek, the state to be back, despite the international terrorism and the systematic terrorism that exceeded all limits. And you might have noticed in the speech of Major General Sisi the day before yesterday is how the people reacted to that. How did they see it? How did they receive it? Their passion to seeing Egypt independent. They're very serious with standing next to the state to face this terrorism, not just to face the terrorism because this is a wave that is going to end, but in starting the construction and the development in the coming period. I was passing yesterday by at a late period of time, and there was a cafe, and the speech of the minister, the Major General Sisi, was being repeated for the 50th or the 60th time, and I found them clapping. The people are listening to the repetition for the 100th time, and they're clapping, they're applauding. And I had Mr. Ahmed Garalla on the phone yesterday, and I asked him if he listened to the speech. He told me all the Gulf region listened. So again, we have a leadership. Anybody who represents or manifests the Egyptian dignity in front of this cheap terrorism. You have to feel some sense of belonging. And Dr. Mustafa Hagazi spoke, and people were listening while they're standing from the beauty and the style and the dignity, the Egyptian dignity, and Prince Saud al-Faisal's situation today. And he's saying, like, to hell with your aids. Saudi Arabia is capable of making up to all the aids. And I would like to give my condolences to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the for the lost prince. And you have a situation, the Arab world is uniting to return not only to the Egyptian people, the whole Arab people, to believe in themselves and to make sure that the Egyptian revolution will change the whole balances of the world. And they started a movement of rebel, and they are calling for early presidential elections in the United States of America against Obama. And this will crawl to Europe as well because of the great nation, the great people of Egypt. They should not be desperate. They are changing the face of the world, not just the face of Egypt. So with all our condolences to the blood that is being spilled, the language you're using, the language that was crowned by the speech of Major General Sisi, when there is a blow like this, their purpose is that we feel pessimistic or get frustrated or get broken, or at least get paralyzed or stop. The biggest response to them is that we go on and be confident. And our nation, our people, as it faced the process of change and remove this vandalizing and traitor regime, it's going to build democracy and it's going to build a great country. Some of the remnants of their leaders, because all of them are hiding, but some of them saying we have peaceful demonstrations or protests. Is that beyond science fiction or lies? There are a history of lies. That's what they are of. And lie to them, this is like Dr. Abdul Halim Andil. When they are telling you something, you know that it's the opposite. Lying to them has a jurisprudent cover to them. You lie to get there and for the project to succeed. You don't want just to lie. You betray. You call for intervention. What more do you want? And you kill. They call America to intervene. What more do you want? And they carry the flags of other flags other than the nation's flags. And we saw that live. And we saw the amount of weapons in the sit-ins and the blood we see on TV every day. Some people say that they're succeeding in confusing and mixing Islam and themselves, and it's obvious from the results of what happened in Egypt that people understood that these people are very far from Islam. And we will have in the conversation Dr. Osama al-Qusi, and he's a physician, a medicinal doctor, but we like to call him the Salafist preacher. Good evening, sir. I have Dr. Azazi Ali Azazi with me. Dr. Osama, the crime that took place today is part of a long line of crimes for those who call themselves an Islamic current. How do you see it in the light of the history of terrorist crimes? It's an amount of crimes that is committed in the name of religion, and the name of religion and Islam, they need to be dealt with from legal perspective only. religion itself regards it as crimes, but anybody who tries to describe them as anything else, and as they say, they're trying to raise the corruption and they call it jihad. So, and God said, there are some people that you like what they say, and they say that God witness what we have in our hearts, and they are of highest enmity, and they destroy in earth, and they kill. And when they say fear God, and he feels pride, and he is in hell.